Hi, everyone. I see a couple more folks are joining in. We'll begin in a few minutes. I'll just give folks a couple more minutes. But in the meantime, can everyone see my screen and slides okay? And hear me okay? You can just comment in the chat or yes? Okay, great. Thanks, Joseph. Thanks, Dion. All right, sweet. I'll just mute myself for another minute or two and then we'll begin. So Mal, you asked a question, where will the recording be available? So we actually have a YouTube channel. In a couple of days, usually within 48 to 72 hours, so like 2 to 3 days, we put all our recordings up on YouTube. I've started sending a transcription as well. So if you wanted to follow along with the transcription, that will be in the YouTube description. I've just added a link to that in the chat there. So you can subscribe, watch all the other recordings as well. So all the reactors around the world, whatever the content is, whether that's very technical or more introductory, like student focused or enterprise focused, all event recordings are on our YouTube channel. So you can watch any/all of them if you'd like. And there's obviously YouTube has their own closed captioning and translation and all that fun stuff. So it should be fairly accessible. But yeah, so today's should be up in a couple of days. All right, sweet. Okay, we'll just give maybe like another minute. All right, so, well, I mean, we can start. I don't have anything super content heavy that people might miss in a couple minutes, but just wanted to say thank you so much for joining today. I'm excited and looking forward to sharing this space and this time with you and taking some time to just really chat about some things that are a little bit important, especially nowadays, that are important for our workplace, for society, and for ourselves, even the people around us. So for this workshop, I've kept the live captions on and the chat is recorded. So as someone asked, it'll be up on YouTube in a couple of days. And I've also added our code of conduct in the chat window. So that's the Reactor Code of Conduct, basically that you're going to behave like a respectable person and not ask anything that's outside the realm of what's appropriate in the workplace. So I think I just want to start off by saying this isn't like a very formal webinar or workshop where I'm posing myself out to be kind of like an expert in diversity and inclusion in tech. But I am someone who's really trying to be educated with all the free and paid resources that are out there. One of them is on Microsoft Learn. So let's keep this time very casual. You can keep your mics on, videos on if you'd like, interrupt me if you have something to add, and we can have some discussion around some of these topics. So I'm currently live streaming from Toronto, Canada. I'd love to know where some of you folks are joining from. So if you wanted to unmute and say where you are coming from, that'd be great. Oh, I see Joseph's typing. Oh, East Coast. Nice. Is that, I don't know if that's the same time zone as Toronto, but Toronto's in the Eastern time zone. I don't know if that's Maryland's the same. Oh, Washington. Cool. Okay, sweet. Well, yeah, I always just ask that because the last time I did this workshop, which was pretty much this time last week, I was super hungry. It was like from 12 to 1 p.m. So just eating my kebabs for lunch at the same time while giving the workshop. So this time I ate beforehand. But yeah, I know it's not lunchtime for everybody. Oh, Gail, you're coming from Surrey? That's pretty cool. All right, sweet. Well, so moving on a little bit, since I've worked for Microsoft and there's a ton of learning resources out there that I've personally been taking to be more aware, be more of like an active ally, or even selfishly to just be more employable for whatever job might come later on in my career. This is probably a really great resource for you to start wherever you are in that journey. If you're looking to be a better designer or a better people manager, or just make better PowerPoint presentations that are more accessible, just attending today and kind of learning about the features and tools within Microsoft technologies is pretty helpful. So let's go ahead. The agenda of how I've set up this talk is almost like a part 2 based on the talk I gave last week, which was called Introduction to Accessibility and Disability, where we talked about things like the differences between diversity and inclusion, why it's important, how we can be better allies, and so on. And these workshops are kind of loosely based on some core concepts that are covered in the Microsoft Learn learning paths. And for those of you who are kind of unfamiliar with what Microsoft Learn is, I have a slide at the end where we'll kind of just cover what that is, and if that's something that's interesting to you and a good resource for you. But what we'll be going today is kind of covering the concepts and topics on the Microsoft Learn path about my Windows and Microsoft 365 and gaming features and tools that can help you be more accessible, and then maybe make you qualified to take the test to pass the badge, to cover things, you know, that might cover things outside the world of Microsoft as well. So we'll briefly go over why accessibility is important and then dive straight into some features and tools that could benefit you. A few features on Windows 10, which is the operating system on many software laptops. Just like Apple laptops have iOS systems, Windows laptops have Windows 10, which is kind of the newest system out there, and a ton of features and things that weren't there in previous software updates. So I think a ton of them aren't ones that we use in our day-to-day lives, and they're not very popular out there, so a lot of people don't talk about them, but they're very helpful. And even when I was researching for this workshop in particular, I learned so many new ones, so that I'm excited to use in my day-to-day life. So anyways, we'll do that, and then at the end, we'll go through the MSLearn module together and hopefully get ourselves a completion badge. My goal is that everyone completes the second module, everyone who's here today, with the Accessibility Fundamentals Learning Path, and then maybe you can share it on LinkedIn or something, and I'd love to see some folks actually completing something and, you know, putting it out in the world that, hey, I'm doing the work to be a better ally, or, you know, get some further knowledge about diversity and inclusion. And that's, I think, really important. And you should, you know, give yourself a pat on the back for just taking that first step. So before we go further, a little bit about me. My name's Eamon, and I live in Toronto, Canada. Some of you are coming from different parts of the world, and from maybe different meetup pages, like you might be coming from the Reactor London meetup page. But my job is to manage the Toronto location for the Reactor. What that means is that I connect with folks like yourselves to help grow a solid community where people can just learn new things. Aside from Microsoft, I run a children's literature B Corp business, which creates inclusive picture books. And so I've been doing work in the diversity and inclusion space for a couple years, especially in the women in STEM space. So I'm kind of excited to, you know, talk about this stuff and merge my passions for tech and inclusion like this. My New Year's resolution was to learn illustration, and that's a hobby that I spend a lot of time towards nowadays. And I'd love to know if any of you have any New Year's resolutions, and have you been keeping up with them? How have they been going? I know I haven't been really keeping up with them. One of mine was to be really active and keep up with fitness, like 3 times a week, work out, but I haven't been doing that. But illustration's one that I'm not going to give up, hopefully. Fingers crossed. And then shameless plug, I just wanted to plug that the Reactors are hosting a multi-part series on journaling, illustrating, drawing complex technical topics and things like that. When we did 5 of them already, and the last one is called Sketch the Tech, and it's on February 6th, and I'll put a link to that. And it should be a good one. So if you're someone who's interested in learning that as well, maybe you should attend. It might be fun for you. And then moving on from there, I wanted to chat just very quickly about why accessibility is even important. Oh, Joseph, your goal resolutions to get a job as a software engineer. That's awesome. I think that's a really good goal, and I hope you can do that. If you wanted to chat about that separately, I'm happy to help. Okay, so something that's really important, especially when it comes to accessibility, is that this is a global problem, no matter where you're from, whether that's the Western world, whether that's, you know, Southeast Asia. Disabilities affect people everywhere. There are currently 1.5 billion people in the world with disabilities, 80% of those who live in developing countries. In Canada specifically, 1 in 7 people, or about 4.5 million people, live with a disability. And in the next 9 years, which is very close, that number will grow to about 1 in 5. So So there's 5 people in a room. One of those folks will be someone who's living with a disability or has some sort of disability, whether that's temporary or permanent, that they interact with day to day. And obviously that changes how you work, how you live, how you interact with people. So it's something to be very aware of. And as societies are aging, we're on course to making disability an even more prominent feature of life. So that's probably going to increase as well. This is globally considered not just like a human rights concern, but it's also a sustainable development priority for many, many countries. And it's one of the pillars for the United Nations as well. You know, how they have like rights to education and so on. Disability and accessibility is one of the major pillars that they're focusing on too. And then before we go ahead to add the actual content, I just wanted to mention that people with accessibility issues or disability issues define those terms in their own ways. There's a very popular theory, which is called the social model of disability, which basically suggests that it's the society or the environment that's disabling the individual rather than their actual impairment or difference. And I think that's pretty popular understanding as well, where, you know, it's not the wheelchair that's making you inaccessible, but it's the lack of the ramp that's making it inaccessible. So I think if you shift that perspective, you can be a little bit more understanding about, you know, people's needs and concerns. So going to the most common definition of accessibility, it means you're creating experiences for people of all abilities. It's the concept where a product or service can be used by everyone and have an equal user experience however they encounter it. So, and an important takeaway is that accessible designs help everyone. It's not only the right thing to do, but often brings benefits to all users. That's because accessibility features help people with help people with disabilities often help other people without disabilities as well. So for example, having video captions on a video, it obviously helps people with maybe hearing difficulties, but it also helps a person who was maybe watching the video on mute because they're in a loud space, or, you know, rowdy voices and things like that, and they can't really hear it in that moment in time. So it helps everybody. Maybe, for example, things like having high contrast text when you're, you know, typing an email or making a presentation. It, you know, obviously will help people with vision difficulties, but it also helps people with perfect eyesight who might be using that app outdoors or in bright sunlight. So it's really important to have accessibility with whatever you're doing. Many users, regardless of their abilities, will face challenges in these different contexts. So when you create things that are for all ability levels, anyone can use them and enjoy them. So on the screen, you'll see a bunch of bubbles. These are a few types of accessibility issues. There are many different types of accessibility issues, some that are, you know, structural and they're like socially created, some that are political or class-based, like someone who's high income earner will be very different than a low income earner. But this slide has a couple of common ones with some examples. So for example, visual difficulties would include being colorblind or having low vision, or you're just blind. Hearing would be either you're hard of hearing or, you know, you only have hearing in one ear. Cognitive could be things like autism, you have seizures or learning difficulties or disabilities, speech impediments, mobility issues, or neural issues or neurodiversity issues they're also called, which could be, you know, like having anxiety, depression, ADHD. These are all considered disabilities that it's really important to be aware of, because people often think disability is just a mobility issue or a visible issue, but often these are very invisible. You wouldn't know if you encounter someone that they are hard of hearing or they have vision difficulties. You wouldn't know them, you know, right off the bat. So it's always important to just kind of not make any assumptions about people. One more thing to also add is that these ability barriers can arise for any person. They can also be incidental, like if you're sleep deprived, you might be more anxious the next day and you might have actual anxiety. Your anxiety might be flared up. So even though your anxiety might not present itself in the workplace, if you're sleep deprived, it could show up tomorrow. So when you're sleep deprived, your brain can act in different ways. Environmental things could come into place. Like if you're using a phone underground, you will have ability issues in, you know, seeing what's going on the screen, or hearing what's happening. So I think it's important to mention that technology can help bring these meaningful innovations to everybody, whether you have a disability, a personal preference, or a unique work style. And, you know, now we'll just go into a few of them. So if you have vision difficulties, one that's really helpful is Magnifier. Display and vision settings can really make it easy to personalize your viewing experience. So if you want to make your screen easier to see, Windows 10 has a lot of features and options that can help you. Number one, I mean, this is fairly common, is to just make things bigger. Magnifier enlarges part or all of your screen. Here, I think, can you see that? So you can see words and images better. So if you want to open it, there's a quick shortcut, which is just Windows plus sign. And you can see it kind of just like zooms in to maybe a part of it or a bigger part of it. You can click that button and make it narrate what's on the screen. Yeah, so it can just help you out, and it's very quick. You can do, Windows plus to zoom in really quickly, Windows minus to zoom out into a certain screen. We can maybe narrate it. It can also narrate into any language or translate that, or you could transcribe that. So there's a couple of different options with that. I personally really like using it, especially when I'm on, really complex web pages. I'll just magnify really quickly because even though I don't personally have a vision disability, other than just distance vision, which I have glasses for, it's just at least I'm not squinting into certain things. It just makes it a little bit of a better experience. Another one is ease of access. So this is really important. Almost a lot of the Windows 10 accessibility tools are built into something called ease of access. So when you go in settings, you'll see this section called ease of access there. There's a ton of customization options available there, which are specifically designed to support people, whether that's with vision issues, hearing issues, interaction issues. Something that you can do here, let me see if I can play this video. Yeah, so if you go in ease of access, you'll notice you can make the text bigger. That can change the text of your entire computer. You can, change the size of different apps. You can make things brighter. This is like fairly straightforward. I think most devices have these kind of things. You can change your background and so forth. But a couple of other ones are you can change your actual cursor. So if the cursor is too small for you, you can make it bigger, smaller. You can change the color size. So yeah, it's kind of fun. Pink cursor, depending on if you have vision issues, where a white cursor on a white screen might not be very visible. Another fun thing that you can actually add that I didn't show here is you can add a little trail where everywhere you move your mouse, it leaves a little trail so you know where it's going. Yep, and then another one is you can turn on visual feedback. So anytime you click, it'll give you some type of feedback and you can choose that feedback. The text cursor, if that little text cursor is not very visible for you, you can turn on the indicator, choose the right, different sizes and colors to just make it visible for you. Oh, I didn't turn it on there, but yeah, so there's different ways that you can make it customized for yourself. Magnifier, we just talked about. Color filters are really helpful. So this applies a color filter to your entire screen. Color filters like grayscale help you see elements on the screen, and then there's specific ones for people who have maybe some types of color blindness. So if you have red-green color blindness, it'll make everything a certain shade, changing everything for you. So it just helps you out. So this is more personal customization. High contrast is a pretty big one. If there's not enough contrast on different elements of your screen, oh, here it's just loading now. But you can turn this on. Oh, that was me just sighing when I was recording this. But yeah, so you can turn on high contrast. You can see that it made everything with a white contrast. You can turn on black high contrast. So that might not be appropriate for everybody, but it's really important to know that you can do these things based on, what's most pleasing to your vision. Yep. Anyway, just a couple more. Yeah. Anyways, so apart from these, there's a couple of fun custom shortcuts that you can add. So like how I mentioned, magnifier is with Windows H, turns on magnifier. There's a couple more, so I'll just add those in the link and you can check those out. It'll be on the last slide, a bunch of links on custom shortcuts that can open fun things for you. All right, next, I wanted to chat about sound. So if you have hearing difficulties or hearing concerns, there's a couple of things that are really helpful that now I'm starting to use as well. I didn't put the whole video up because it's slightly long, but they're all up on Microsoft Learn and you can check them out on your own time. One of them is called Dictation. It's a speech-to-text software tool in Windows that lets you type with your voice. So you can input text using a mic rather than your keyboard. So you can just talk things out and it'll just type them out. This voice recognition technology can help people who have difficulty maybe typing with a regular keyboard, or they just have, mobility issues with their fingers and they can't be typing out long, pages and pages or long emails the whole day. You can just talk them out and it'll do that. Personally, if my mom is, telling me like a cooking recipe or something, I can just dictate it and turn on dictation, and I don't have to, memorize everything. I can just let her do it, say it out, and it's just saved somewhere. So this one also has shortcuts as well, which I'll put them later on. And it's fairly straightforward where you can give commands. So for example, if you wanted to say like, oh, stop dictation, you can just say stop dictation, it'll stop and it'll save it. You could say new line, it'll take it to a new line. You could say delete, you can add full stop or period, you can add a question mark by saying these things out loud. So it's really helpful. Another one is Narrator. And it's probably my favorite and one of my most used apps now. It's a screen reader that's actually built into Windows 10, which describes what's on your screen. So you can use that to kind of navigate through what's happening. So if you turn on Narrator, it lets you just use these commands to control your computer without using a mouse. So if people are blind or have low vision, or they have difficulty, like reading text and using things like buttons because it's harder, it's really helpful. And it can be used with Braille as well, Braille devices as well. And so for example, if you turn on Narrator and there's a huge long Wikipedia page, it can just read everything like title, whatever it is, and like read through the text, tell you what's on the images. But what you can also do is turn on scan mode with Narrator. So Narrator has an option called scan mode, which just helps you quickly scan what everything is and only tell you the most important stuff. So basically when it's turned on, it just summarizes everything really quickly. You can quickly like kind of go through left and right arrows as well to just skip a bunch of content where if they're talking about maybe some background information, like you might notice a ton of online recipes now where they have this whole story about, oh, how I met my partner and we discovered this recipe, and it's so irrelevant. You can just skip through all that and go straight down to the most important information. And it'll just read it out to you. So it's almost like listening to a podcast versus, always constantly being on your screen. And personally, I've started doing this a lot because now that everything's virtual, I feel like I'm looking at a screen for 20 hours a day, which is just a lot. And yes, I do sleep very little, so 20 hours is probably accurate of how long I'm awake. So my eyes are very dry these days. So I'm always just listening to content a lot more now. So I really like Narrator. But yeah, it's really great. So another thing that you can do is also set how much detail you want. So they have these 5 levels where, level 1 will just give you all the main information, like what's text on the page. But level 5 would be going super into detail about, title on the top left, image top right, and then giving a description of what that image is, and so forth. So it's like super, super high definition based on what your needs are. So I really like that. I've just chosen the most simplest one for myself because I don't have those accessibility concerns. A couple others for hearing concerns is that if you have partial hearing loss or deafness in one ear, you can kind of control the audio with this thing called mono audio. I didn't include that here either, but if you go in settings, click on mono audio, and you can set which of the speakers will play what sound. So if you have hearing in your life, sometimes some songs, they'll break apart the audio where your left ear will hear something different than your right ear. You can kind of customize that to what you like. Another thing is that you can use closed captions, and this is kind of self-explanatory. With Windows 10, you can really change how those closed captions are seen. So that would include like color, size, background transparency. So you can customize how the captions are seen for yourself. Whether that's, watching a YouTube video or something, you can customize those, which helps quite a bit. All right, next, and also as I'm talking, if you would like to comment or have any questions, please put them in the chat because I'm checking that as well. All right, so this one affects with neurodiversity concerns. So for people maybe with disabilities like ADHD, how you work in the workplace are very different. And so how you interact with like a computer or your phone is very different. And how you work might be really affected by things like pop-up notifications or something. So there's a bunch of ways in Windows to minimize these distractions so it's easier to focus. One of them is you can minimize visual distractions by turning off animations. These are things that you could have done in ease of access, that screen I showed a couple of slides ago. You can turn off like background images, hide icons and taskbars icons, and just really simplify your computer. One thing that is really helpful that I also use and a lot of people use, especially at work, is called Focus Assist. You can turn off these notifications in Windows anytime that you need to focus. So when this is enabled, it blocks alerts and notifications from any of your apps based on what you like. So maybe people with any mental health disabilities like anxiety may like getting things done without, getting constant notifications of like someone messaging you or your coworker messaging you or something like that. And it might help you reduce some stress as well. You can do that in the ease of access settings. So it's really straightforward, so I won't talk about how you can get to that. But it's really helpful because you can set it for certain apps. So you can customize it. So if you're playing a game, you can make it so that these certain notifications only come out when I'm playing games, and these can come out when I'm working and I have my email open. So that really helps. I've personally set it so that I only get alarm messages or any meeting request messages while I'm working. If people are messaging me on like, Teams or something, it doesn't give me a sound. It just pops up on the side, and that's a little bit less distracting because I noticed anytime someone would message me and I'd hear like ding, my new message, it was just super distracting, and I wasn't really focusing on work because everybody's messaging you all the time, and it's very distracting. So you just kind of have to do what works best for you. Another tool I talked about dictation, but it's a tool, there's another tool called Dictate, which is built into your Microsoft 365 apps. So these are things like Microsoft Word or Outlook or PowerPoint. So there's a button there that's actually called Dictate. So it basically lets you compose and edit with your voice, similar to what I talked about earlier. So I won't dive too deep into that. But this whole thing, Dictate and Dictation and a couple others, are part of Microsoft Learning tools. These are some free tools that implement some proven techniques to help read and write for learners that have maybe different age ranges or different ability levels. So there's things like Dictate, there's Read Aloud, which provides the option to compose and edit text verbally. There's something called Immersive Reader, which is really helpful for everyone. Maybe things like with dyslexia or other kind of like reading disabilities, where it can help you change the font of any web page. I've kind of put that picture up there where there's that little book icon. When you go on a website or something and click on that book, it helps you customize how you're reading or interacting with that web page. So that's really helpful. And then another one that I find really helpful as well is if you can turn on text suggestions. It helps you with constructing sentences because it gives you the top 3 or 4 most popular words that might have come up with that. And I know this is fairly common because it's in our phone keyboards and everything, but it's something that you do have to turn on in your computer if you'd like that. So, it gives you a lot of help. And, if you're learning the English language or you just need some help with your writing or you want a better, spell check and so on, it's really helpful. All right, so moving on from neurodiversity issues, I think some key mobility issues that are more common and are more visible accessibility concerns are things like using your mouse, your keyboard, hello, speech recognition. Windows 10 has a ton of options for making them easier to use. You can change the shape and color of the mouse pointer, which I showed a couple of slides earlier. You can also use your mouse keys to move the mouse pointer. So this is something that you would have to customize as well in that ease of access, where if you aren't able to use a mouse or the trackpad on your laptop, you can customize it so that when you move certain keys, your mouse moves in those directions. Some other things that are there are something called sticky keys. So that's something you will have to customize in settings as well, where if you press a certain key 3 or 4 times, it does a certain thing for you. So for me, if I press enter 5 times, it just pulls up the settings menu for me. So instead of me going on my mouse and going all the way to settings and open, I just like press that 5 times. So you can customize those keyboard shortcuts for yourself, and you can do all of those in settings, and that just really helps kind of mitigate some concerns that folks might have. So if physical disabilities do make it difficult to use a keyboard, there's also some built-in support for eye control. So this might not apply to everybody, but it's a really effective way to use a PC with your eyes. You need kind of separate hardware for that as well, but it really helps with accessibility concerns where you can just use your eyes to track across a board, and certain, blinks or certain directions or movements with your eye will change and do certain things for you. So yeah, this is some more specialized customization skills, so this might not be for everyday use for everybody, but for some folks, that is their everyday use. So it's really important to recognize that there are these abilities and options out there for people in your life that might have these concerns. Another thing, I know we chatted about dictation earlier, but if you have speech recognition turned on, along with dictate, you can pretty much do anything on your computer with just your voice. Speech recognition lets you navigate the actual computer, so like Windows 10, while dictate might help you with the apps, so like with Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. So if you wanted to say something like, oh, put the computer to sleep, or turn on or enter password, or turn on Windows Hello, for example, speech recognition will help you do that. So it's just a really helpful way to do that. I personally don't have speech recognition turned on just because I live with family and people are talking all the time, and it's just not very conducive to actually doing work when people are talking about random stuff and maybe like Alexa or something turns on, which happens all the time. Another thing is the on-screen keyboard. So this is something that's prevalent in almost all devices. So it's not just Windows, Apple laptops have it, a lot of computers have it, where it's an on-screen keyboard that you can use with a pointing device like a mouse or a joystick. So those with mobility limitations and learning disabilities or cognitive impairment, those things like word completion and prediction tools with an on-screen keyboard can be really helpful. All right, so moving on for some of the Windows 10 features. I know I only covered a couple of them, but there's honestly so many. I'll put a link to pretty much all of them. There's like a big hub for Windows accessibility tools. I'll add that in the last slide. You can check those out on your own time and maybe find some ways that you can work better, help the people around you as well, and maybe make things accessible for your coworkers and yourself. All right, so moving on to gaming features and tools, there's a couple of things that you can use with maybe Xbox or Copilot. Copilot is one that I actually found out about recently. So what the Xbox, pardon me, let me just go back to my slide. There, great. So what Copilot is basically, here. Let me go back to that. So since gaming must be accessible for everybody, just like any other digital activities, Copilot mode on PCs and Xbox, what it does is it links two controllers, so you can use them as if they're actually one controller. Once they're linked, both controllers have full control, so you can use either of those controllers how you like. So for gamers who have maybe mobility disabilities or maybe concerns like their left arm isn't, they can't use their left arm, they can actually use maybe their right arm to navigate and maybe use their chin or your foot with the other controller to navigate, maybe going left or right, maybe shooting with one hand. So it's really helpful because with mobility disabilities or for collaborative gaming where they need assistance, this can be really helpful. So there's a couple ways you can take advantage of that. If a single person can use two controllers simultaneously, for example, if you're playing a game, hold one controller in one hand, maybe use the other one in hand or foot, or their chin, and so forth. I mean, I just talked about that, but it's really helpful because you don't always have to use both your hands. A controller is built for pretty much able-bodied folks with two hands, and that's not always how it has to be. What you can also do is play collaboratively with two different controllers. So two people share one character or one avatar in a game, and my role, for example, would be just to shoot and navigate or drive, and the other person's role with their computer or their controller, which could be actually anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to be in the same region. It doesn't have to be connected to the same Xbox. So, for example, me or my sister who lives, 40 minutes away from me can be playing as one character, but our controllers are connected. So it can really help even if you don't have mobility concerns. It's a really fun way to interact and engage with people and play games. One other way that a lot of people use it is with parents and children. So you're kind of just like the training wheels for them at that point, where if you're teaching them how to play games, they can take the lead and maybe, you know, help with one controller, but you're actually kind of helping them out in the back end with the other controller, but they don't know that. So that's really helpful. You can set them up on Xbox One, and it's really helpful. It's really exciting. So I'll put the ways on how to do that online as well. It'll be in the last slide. And then chatting about the Xbox Adaptive Controller. So this is really exciting. It's actually, so the Xbox Adaptive Controller is actually very, very popular as one of the best sort of accessibility new technology to come out in recent years. There's a ton of like press and marketing and really, really good press about it, and you know, really great stories of how people are using it. But this adaptive controller is basically what it is. It's kind of like a hub for devices to make gaming more accessible. This controller has, you know, large programmable buttons. It can connect to all these different external switches and mounts and buttons and joysticks, and it all kind of connects together to create kind of like a very custom experience. The adaptive controller is designed primarily to meet the needs of gamers with very limited mobility. So it's primarily for those audiences, but maybe if you have limited mobility with your hands, you can put a controller on the floor, press the larger buttons, you can have something else maybe on your shoulder, maybe your arm and elbows, so you can really play with your whole body with really custom control. So not everything, if you can't really press buttons, you can play in a different way. So it really kind of creates a very holistic experience. All right, moving on. So when we chat about Microsoft 365 features and tools, I think Microsoft 365, which includes things like Word and PowerPoint, are probably the most common Microsoft technologies that people use day to day. I think now, you know, whether you're in school or work or, you know, even using Microsoft Teams like we're using now, almost everyone has engaged with these kind of technologies at some point. And so it's really important to chat about how you can be more accessible. Diversity is really a strength for any business, and diverse teams need to be able to collaborate seamlessly together. So, you know, the vision for Microsoft 365, at least like the Microsoft vision, was to empower everyone to create accessible content and provide equal access to information to people with disabilities, like with blindness or low vision or dyslexia. AI is already infused in Microsoft 365 in a bunch of different ways. So for example, there's automatic alt text now in images. So if you put an image up in Word or PowerPoint, it'll automatically kind of use computer vision to find out or guess what's in that image and give you alternative text for it. And for those who don't know, alt text is basically alternative text, which describes what's in an image. So when we're talking about things like screen readers or dictation or narrator, like we chatted about a couple of slides earlier, that text is what it would read out to you. So for people who are maybe blind and they can't tell what's in an image, and you've put an image on a slide, maybe one of your coworkers, they don't know what's there. So I think just to be more inclusive, it would be great if you could add some alt text to an image. And that way they know what's on the slide and they know what's happening and you know what's happening. And so, you know, with things like AI, they're automatically adding alt text. It's making things more accessible without you having to do a lot of work for it. So there really is no excuse not to have that. Yeah. And I know this, I might have skipped over this earlier, but screen readers are basically devices that help people with vision accessibility issues to describe what people are looking at. So that's like the official definition. Yeah, so we can go forward from that, but I just wanted to touch on some things like how these apps help people of all abilities access and navigate technology, and not just people with accessibility concerns, which I know we chatted about earlier, but it's really important to know that when you're creating content out into the world using Microsoft 365 stuff, like whether you're typing emails in Outlook or messaging people on Teams, what you're doing, it doesn't matter if you don't have any accessibility concerns. The other party, you don't know if they have any invisible accessibility concerns, which you don't know about. So with things that are built in, you can really make the workplace interactions and your family interactions and anything else that's going out into the world just a little bit better for other people. And there's so many different features, but I'll only touch on a couple that were brought up in the MSLearn module and a few that I personally use. So a couple that were brought up in the MSLearn module that you might be interested in are, you know, on the screen now. Microsoft Teams, for example, has closed captions. A lot of folks in our new virtual world are using Teams now. So with live captions, you can detect what people are saying in a meeting. There's real life captions, real-time captions. They're on for this workshop as well. So if you want to turn them on, there's a little button there. You can go in options and turn it on. They help your meeting be more inclusive to participants who are maybe deaf or hard of hearing, maybe different levels of language proficiency. Not everyone speaks fluent English. So I think it's really helpful for folks that need that little bit of support to actually, interact and understand what they're reading is what they're seeing. So you can just turn those on. It's literally one click. But the other thing is that, if someone is joining a meeting in a loud space or they have their family or kids running around in the background, it's really important. If you turn those on, they will also really benefit from those accessibility features. It can also help minimize any communication barriers. There's an inline message translation feature that lets people translate Teams messages into their specified language settings for Microsoft 365. So if you receive a message that's in another language, you can just go to the top of the message, click More Options, Translate, and get an instant translation. I haven't really come across this because most of the folks that I interact with speak English, but with our team, so my team in particular, the Reactor team, we're kind of spread across the whole world. So folks that are in Brazil or Abu Dhabi or Bangalore or China. So if we were to ever come across that issue, we could just, translate that instantly. For people who are neurodiverse or have mental health disabilities, it can also make it easier to focus if you have a simpler or blurred background. So for example, right now my background is like a simulation of a normal room or like an average room. But what would be more accessible, which something that I could do, is actually just have a blurred background, so it helps you focus in on what's the person who's presenting, because distractions can be really apparent. And this is kind of research that a really busy or distracting background is not very conducive to better learning for people with neurodiverse issues. All right, and then there's also, immersive reader in Teams, which we chatted about earlier, so you can have that as well. PowerPoint Presenter Coach is really, really advanced and honestly very underrated. I actually had a presentation once by somebody who's called a PowerPoint wizard, and he taught us some really cool things, like you can make Instagram videos on PowerPoint now, you can edit photos and remove backgrounds and really, really complex stuff, which people don't know about or they don't use as often. And now I'm a huge fan of PowerPoint. But one thing that I really love is Presenter Coach. It's this, AI-powered tool which provides training and feedback to improve your public speaking skills. So what it does is you can enter this thing called a rehearsal mode, and it provides on-screen guidance for pacing, inclusive language, use of profanity and filler words, or anything that's culturally insensitive. So you just kind of go through your presentation as if you're presenting it, and then at the end, they'll give you a score on how you did. So how long you took, how many slides, and your pace, and so forth, and it just helps you present a little bit better. It helps you deliver presentations with confidence, and this could be really helpful for people who are neurodiverse and have mental health disabilities like anxiety. Using appropriate language is obviously also really important. So promoting inclusion by listening for any culturally sensitive phrases like disability, age-related phrases, gender, race, orientation, so forth, or even geopolitical topics like maybe talking about certain elections or something like that. It'll flag it and tell you, oh, this might not be right to say. And so you can really give better presentations that way. And so that's really helpful. And then obviously, and really helpfully, the presentation translator also has an add-in which you can just translate those live subtitles within PowerPoint. So even if Teams didn't have closed captioning options, I could just turn on captions in PowerPoint, and the people who are listening to that presentation can just translate those captions to whatever language that they speak, and it's all live and in real time. So it just adds a little bit of inclusivity within whatever you're doing. So it's always best just to turn on captions regardless. It doesn't matter if you know someone who's in the room or not, it just helps. One more thing that I really like, Microsoft Translator. It helps not only break down these language barriers, but it provides people who are deaf or hard of hearing with a tool to more easily understand content. For example, if someone who speaks English is listening to a presentation in a language that they don't speak and is on Translator, they can use their device to get those English captions of what the presenter is saying. So for example, like I'm talking now, if you use the Translator app, just hear what I'm saying, it'll in live time just translate it to whatever language is on the app. So I think there's like, I don't know, 200-300 languages on there, but you could just translate it to maybe like Hindi or French or something like that. And then personally, what I really like that really would help even when you're traveling is that it has a camera feature that you can just take a picture of a sign or at an airport or something and instantly translate it. So you can go around. So there's many applications beyond, businesses and personal use, but even things like schools really use that. If you take a picture of something, it really helps that cross-language understanding. And then the last one that I really like as well, and I think a lot of people use that already, but it's really important to mention why it's important, is PowerPoint Designer. It automatically generates design ideas that you can choose from, and these design ideas are based on things that are accessible. So it'll never give you a suggestion that is inaccessible for people to read. So where your eye goes from left to right, where an image should be, if you're reading it on a screen reader, it always is something that is inclusive for folks. So anyone who's trying to take their presentation to the next level, you just click a button, it'll give a bunch of suggestions. And it helps people with disabilities as well because they don't have to click around and move move a heading to the left and move images to the right like an inch and make everything line up. And it's a lot of interaction with their mobile, their mouse or their keyboard commands. So you can do things a lot quicker without, having that much interaction that's mobility related or maybe neurodiversity related. Super easy to access. You just click the button in the ribbon and it helps you out. So these are the 4 that were covered in the MSLearn module, but I'll just talk about 3 of them that I really like that weren't covered in the MSLearn module, but I really like. One of them is Office Lens. What it does is it helps you transform text on a printed page into digital content that can be read aloud. So what it does is if you take a bunch of notes on paper or something, people are talking, you can just take a picture of it and it'll automatically just convert it to text and put it on Word that you can like edit or, do whatever you want with, put it in an email or something. And like things like blurry photos and things like that, you don't have to worry about it because it's very, very advanced and can handle a lot of complex images. Things like equations. If you take a math equation, write it down, it'll just take a picture of it and transform it into an equation later. Another thing that it can do is do the same with Excel documents. So if you made a quick table on a piece of paper and write a bunch of information like whatever numbers, names, everything, take a picture, you can upload it in Excel and it makes that table for you. So it's very, very powerful tool. It recognizes everything, even drawings. If you make a little drawing, you can put it in PowerPoint and you can change that whole drawing. It's like a shape almost. Whether you make a circle or something, it'll make a circle in PowerPoint after that. So it's very powerful and it's really accessible as well. The second one that I really like is Tell Me. You might not know that this is a feature because you think it's kind of, expected that there would be like a search bar or something, but a lot of folks don't use this. I know my father doesn't use this because he always asks me how to do certain things, whether that's, change his email signature or something. And I always tell him like, you can just type it in the search bar and you can find it. You don't have to ask me every single time. But yeah, so you'll notice that in emails and Word documents or anything like that, there's a text box on the ribbon that says, tell me what to do. And it's a text field where you can enter generic words and phrases about what you want to do to quickly get the features you want or you want them to perform. So maybe like formatting or difficult to find things that are kind of hidden somewhere. They'll use everyday language. So I could say things like add my name or something and it'll transform into signature. So what the official word for that is, it'll find it based on kind of loosely based on what I'm talking about. So if you're looking for something very specific, like you want to bold some text or you want to do some very specific formatting or input a YouTube video, for example, you could just say input YouTube video or add YouTube video or something, and it'll bring up the topic where it says insert online picture, insert online video or something. So it just helps you find what you want to do very quickly. And then the last one I think is the most important one, especially for things like this. If you aren't someone who has any accessibility concerns, this is something that you can do for the people around you. That's really, really helpful. It's literally a button that's in almost all apps. That's accessibility checker. In your emails, in PowerPoint especially, when you're, delivering a presentation, sending an email, writing a document, you can just press that button on. It works in the background, so it's not really in your face. And what it does is it alerts you in real time of issues that make your content difficult for people with disabilities to access. So for example, it'll alert you of low contrast text that's difficult to read because maybe the font color is not bright. So for example, maybe on this slide, maybe the green on my slide where it says accessibility checker is not very accessible. So people with low visibility wouldn't be able to see it. So I would click accessibility and it would just tell me, oh, this is too difficult to read, maybe use white or maybe use black and so on. And it just tells you how to basically deliver better content and make things accessible for the people that are around you and your coworkers. And there's actually something that you can turn on in Outlook Mail if you use Outlook, which is called a mail tip. And what it does is informs your coworkers of your preference for accessible content. So what this means is that anytime they're sending you an email, and if you've turned that on, like I need accessibility help in my email, for example, if you've turned that on, they'll know that, oh, Eamon needs accessible content. So before I send this email to her, accessibility checker will check the email automatically and tell you, hey, you should change these things because she won't be able to read it because she has turned on her preference for accessible content. So it's really important, I think, to know these things, that you have these options available to you, and people around you might have these concerns, and you can be a better person to be around and better content creator like that. So accessibility checker, super simple, one-click buttons that you can turn on in almost any app, even Excel, for example, and you can just create better stuff with that. So I know I've been chatting quite a bit, and we've almost used up the full hour, but I think it's important to chat about the difference between disability and inclusion. All of our bodies will change over time, but we all deserve that dignity and access to have those experiences at every stage in our lives. Most people will need to seek accessibility solutions at some point, whether that's for yourself, family member, colleague. Disability is part of the human experience. We all need to engage in the work to make our world accessible, but inclusion is a choice. So disability is, more so of a state of existence, while inclusion is like an action verb. So you are choosing to be inclusive and you're doing the work for it. So they are interconnected concepts, but they're not interchangeable. So it's really important to know that. There's a really famous quote that's on the slide there by a leader in the D&I world who said that diversity is being asked to the party while inclusion is being asked to dance. There's obviously oversimplified and takes out a lot of important concepts, but it's an important distinction that, even though inclusion and diversity and everything can seem like, oh yeah, you're just being diverse, you're being inclusive. There's many forms of that, and what you do changes what you how you'll come across into the world. So it's great that you've joined this call today, because that means you are taking that one step. All right, so chatting a little bit about Microsoft Learn. It's a little bit of a shift from what we were talking about earlier, but Microsoft Learn is one of these platforms that can really help you do that work required to maybe get a new job, learn something new, maybe upskill yourself, maybe apply for a promotion, or change careers, or maybe just learn something that's interesting to you. What it is it's a free online training platform that has these interactive learning pathways for Microsoft products and even external technology as well. There's a ton of, fun, guided, hands-on interactive content that's very specific to your role and goals. It has, role-based training and learning paths for specific jobs. Like, for example, if you're trying to be a software engineer, you can go in that learning path and see what's required and what's current, what's updated for what people are learning and are qualified in nowadays to get those jobs. You can take these courses, they're all free, and you can also, track your progress, share it online. So if you take a course, finish it, get the exam, you can share, I've completed XYZ, put it out on LinkedIn, people know that you're doing that. One of these modules is the Accessibility Fundamentals Learning Path, and today's workshop is basically one part of that. Last week, we did the disability and accessibility one. Today, we did features and tools. Next week, we'll chat about creating actual accessible content, so maybe diving a little bit deeper. And lastly, we'll talk about digital accessibility. So, every Tuesday, every week this month, we've been doing that. So what I hope is that you'll take that, learning path with me. Like we'll do it now, basically, together. Maybe get a trophy, and then hopefully, I'd love to see you all, get this accessibility fundamentals trophy and share it out into the world. You're welcome to join me every week, same time as today, and we can all do them all together. So it's not, all you're on your own time. And yeah, and you can take some exams, but this accessibility fundamentals one doesn't have an exam. It's just a quick quiz. There's some further learning resources that I'll share out as well, which, it's like some important documentaries you can watch, how to be a good ally, what kind of places you can shop from that support disabled and accessibility communities. So, it can seem like you're really wading through a ton of content out there in the world when you're, learning more about accessibility. But so anyway, there's some couple of resources that are really good gateway starting points to be a better ally. And now we'll do a quick knowledge check. So if you can click on this link, here, I'll post it in the chat as well. Oh, hi, I see a bunch of comments. Okay, I'll reply to the comments in a bit, but if you want to go to that link, here. So that link opens up the Microsoft Learn modules about today's topic. And you'll notice it has stuff about the Windows 10 accessibility features, gaming features, 365 features, and so on. And then there's a quick knowledge check. We can just do this together since I've covered all the other content. Notice that there's, can everyone see my slide, by the way? Can you see that I have my knowledge check up? Let me know if you can't see it, but it seems like I can see it. Yeah? Can you see? Yeah, okay, thanks, Joseph. Yeah, so you can check your knowledge here. So first question, what does the Copilot feature enable two physical controllers to be treated as one controller output? What setting notifications are available with Focus Assist? You can do, yeah, pretty much change anything. So alarms, priorities, all notifications, you can change those. Primary audience for Microsoft Translator, personal, business, education, yeah, all of the above. I mean, these are very simple questions. They're, it's still good to kind of check to see if you know what you're talking about. After you use the presenter coach and rehearse a presentation, what will you receive? You can get a score, report, all of the above, I think. I could be wrong. Oh, it's not all of it. Oh, rehearsal report, sorry. There. So there, we got that. You answered all the questions. You can just continue. It usually gives you a little bit, well, since I already did this earlier, but it would give me a little page that says share on LinkedIn, like you've got a trophy, you can share this out on the world. And it's really good because I have been noticing quite a few folks sharing these things like, hey, I just completed the accessibility fundamentals learning path. And it's a really great way to show that you are being inclusive and diverse. And yeah, that's kind of the end of this presentation, but I'd love to chat more. Oh, I see a couple of questions. I know we only have a minute, but I'll add a survey link in the chat. So if you have any feedback at all about maybe I'm talking too fast or something's, I don't know, anything that you could change or any constructive criticism, I'd love to hear it. Even if you want to say, hey, she did a great job, please tell me. I love to read. I don't have to read it. I'll ask my manager to read it if it's something that might be hurting my feelings, but it doesn't matter. Just, any feedback is good feedback. So yeah, if you could fill out that survey, that would be great. And so there's a couple of questions out there. Great session. I need to drop off. Yeah, so Gail, well, they're gone now, but yeah, so I have the YouTube channel link up in the chat. I'll post it again. The recording will be up there within 2 to 3 days. Usually it's up, so you can check that out there. Next question, Pranan said, how could Microsoft tools be inclusive single name users? Today's tool all has first name and last name, and there are millions out there who don't have. I believe this is underrated, but I think it's important to have every user. So Pranam, I actually don't know about this DNI issue, but I'll definitely look into it. I didn't know that they were mandatory. So basically what Pranam mentioned is that most tools now have a first and last name mandatory option. And I know this has been kind of contested before where things will, mandatorily ask you for, your gender or how you identify and things like that. So I know that that's definitely a DNI concern, but I don't know much about it from the Microsoft perspective. So I'll definitely do the research and I don't know how to respond to you, but if you want to send an email or send a message to the Reactor Toronto page, I'll definitely find out and respond to you there. Any other questions? Oh, I see Pranam, you're typing. Here, we'll just go back to this. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, I know we're on time, but if you have any questions, please LinkedIn you. Yeah, so if you want to find my personal information, let me go back to the slide, which has my LinkedIn, and you can connect there. You can connect with me that way, and I'll definitely find out and get back to you. Where is it? Here. So my Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, it's all there. You can message me there, and I'll do my best to respond and hopefully have a better answer for you there. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for taking time out of your day wherever you are. It's lunch hour for me, but if you're not in that time zone, you know, anytime you come out and like support by learning something new, it's always great. And I hope you learned something. I hope you learned at least 1 or 2 things that could help you. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Dion. Thanks, Anish. Oh, thanks, Emily. All right, sweet. Thank you. All right, we'll end the session now. And then if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for joining, everyone. Bye-bye.